Hi there, welcome to my channel or welcome back. My name is Marley and today I'm going to be doing the book superlatives tag that was created by Kirsten's Corner. I saw her do this last year in December and I didn't do it, but I marked down that I wanted to do it next year. So here I am. This tag is basically like the yearbook superlatives that are in the yearbook. So where you like assign a classmate each of these little superlatives. She came up with a bunch of them for books. So that's what I'm going to be doing, reflecting on all of the books that I read so far in 2021. I have read 100 books. So out of all the 100 books, these are the ones I chose for each of these superlatives. So for the very first one, it is Class Clown. What is the funniest book you've read this year? So for me, that was an easy answer. It was Dial A for Aunties by Jessie Q Sutanto. I imagine many people have heard of this book by now, but if you haven't, it's about this girl, Medi, who is Chinese Indonesian, and she has this wedding business with her 3 aunties and her mom. They each take on a different part of the wedding business, and she is the photographer. They also happen to get very involved in her life, specifically her dating life, so they end up setting her up on this date with this man, and she ends up accidentally killing him. So they are having to deal with this dead body, trying to hide it, take care of it. Meanwhile, they are trying to put on like the biggest wedding of their career. So it's kind of like a thriller in a sense because it has to do with death and murder and covering up of murder. But then it also is mainly a comedy because, I don't know, it just really reminded me of like one of those chaotic comedy movies that you would watch where these super funny characters are dealing with this crazy situation and trying to get away with it. There's also a pretty cute romance in this, but don't get your hopes up, like it's not the main part by any means, but it still is very cute. There are some parts in this book that will have you laughing out loud. Like, it's so funny. It's being made into a movie, thankfully, and I'm really excited to see it on screen. But yeah, this would definitely win the Class Clown Award for this year from me. Then we have Drama Queen, the most dramatic book you've read this year. I've definitely read quite a few dramatic books. I read a lot of thrillers this year, so yeah. But the one I'm gonna go with is As Good as Dead by Holly Jackson. I've talked about this book a lot on my channel, and I feel like it is just the most dramatic. So if you don't know, this is following this teenage girl named Pip who has made a reputation for herself of solving mysteries, whether that's murders, kidnappings, whatever. So she's very notorious for that now, and in this book she actually has someone stalking her and kind of threatening her, so that is what she's trying to figure out in this book. But this one really takes a turn about halfway through and just gets so dramatic and just goes to places I really did not foresee it going to. It kind of goes off and away from the typical formula of the first 2 books in this series. If you didn't know, A Good Girl's Guide to Murder is the first book, but I just thought it was so crazy what was happening, what the characters were choosing to do. I did not agree with what the characters decided to do, and I just thought the main characters being very dramatic, so that's why I have to put this book as the most dramatic of the year. Class Couple, your favorite book couple you read this year. So I also did read a decent amount of romance this year, but I think one of my favorite ones had to be The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. I read this way back in February, March, like very early in the beginning of the year. So it sucks that like I don't remember it as freshly, but I do remember that I loved this book. Most people know. It is about Olive and Ethan, and it is an enemies to lovers, and it was great. So basically Olive and Ethan's 2 siblings are getting married. That's how they know each other, and then everyone at the wedding ends up getting sick except for them, including the bride and groom. So they give the honeymoon to Olive and Ethan to go on since it's like non-refundable or whatever. So they go on this honeymoon that was supposed to be for their siblings, and they pretend that they're married or else they'll get kicked off the trip because this trip is for a married couple. So it's also like fake dating, fake relationships. So they hate each other due to like a typical misunderstanding, and they have to pretend that they're married on this trip, lying to everyone, faking it. Meanwhile, they hate each other and are growing more and more fond of each other and bonding more, and it's great. I love it. I've read some other enemies to lovers, I've read some other fake dating, I've read The Hating Game, but I just like this one so much more, and I think it's my favorite one that has these tropes. I really need to reread it and like relive it, but yeah, I think this would have to be my favorite romance of the year. Next up is Most Changed, a book with the best character growth. So this one is a little tricky. I feel like so many characters go through such character growth and journeys throughout their books, but the one that I thought of was in Beartown by Frederick Bachman. This was a very emotional story, and a lot of characters just go through a lot, but the character I'm thinking of specifically with the most character growth would probably be Peter. But as for the plot of the book, if you don't know, it follows this town called Beartown, and they are very much a hockey town. Hockey is like their biggest claim to fame, like their hockey team. One day, this girl who is the daughter of like the coach, or like the guy who runs the team, ends up getting sexually assaulted by like the star member of the hockey team, and it is just about the fallout of that and how it affects like all the teammates, all of the girl's family, all of the other people who live in this town, and seeing their reaction to it. I think Peter had really great character development. He was, you know, the coach of the hockey team. He loved the hockey team so much, but then it was his daughter that was assaulted. It's a very like complex issue for him, and I don't know, he goes through a lot, so I feel like characters in this book, specifically Peter, kind of have really great character growth. However, something I didn't plan to talk about because I just finished the book like an hour ago is The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune, and I think a character named Lioness in this book also had amazing character growth and development. He starts out as a very like rigid, by the book, like always referring to his rules and regulations on how to do his job kind of person, and then he learns to be more accepting, to be more like free, do the right thing even if it's not necessarily written in like the rule book. And this is about Lioness, who works for this department in charge of magical youth, I think they're called, where they go and investigate all of these orphanages that look after magical youth. And he gets sent on this special assignment to this orphanage that has more of like the dangerous kids. So at first he's very like scared of them, and then he learns that they're actually all very special, all very harmless, and just want love and just need love, and they really help him grow and learn a lot of lessons, and it's beautiful. So I just had to mention that as well. Next up is Most Popular. So a book character you want to be friends with. Again, there's so many options, but I decided to go with August from One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. She is this 20-something-year-old girl going to college in New York, and she bumps into this girl named Jane who is stuck on this train, ends up falling in love with her, but also ends up finding out that Jane is displaced from time. She's actually from the 70s and somehow time traveled to, you know, our current time and is stuck here on the train, and August takes it upon herself to try and save Jane and get her sent back to where she belongs. I think August would make a really great friend, for one, because she's like around my same age. She even kind of looks like me. And I really liked how like determined she was to get Jane back to where she was supposed to be. She reminded me kind of like Pip from A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, or like any protagonist who gets really into a mystery and wanting to solve it. And I love those types of characters. Yeah, I just really like how determined she is, what a good friend she is, a good girlfriend she is eventually. She also is just kind of like a typical 20-something-year-old girl, like nothing too crazy going on. So I feel like we would get along. Next up is Most Likely to Be President. So obviously this is a book character that is most likely to be the president one day. This was an easy choice for me. I decided it would be Chiamaka from Ace of Spades by Farida Abike Amide. So Chiamaka is literally such an obvious choice because she is like the school president. She's always been so involved in all the extracurricular activities in the student government. She's also super popular, always dating like the most popular guy, all that sort of stuff. And I feel like because of how smart she is, how determined she is, she could be a future president. I don't really know what more to say other than that. If you've read this book, you would agree. I'm sure you would answer the same way. But I really adored her character in this. If you don't know what this is about, it's about these two black students who go to this private school, and then they start getting targeted by this mysterious person named Aces, who seems to be trying to like ruin their lives and revealing secrets about them, and then also revealing like fake. Hey guys, so I lost footage again. Love that for me. So here I am to finish off this video. As I was saying about Ace of Spades, Aces is revealing real secrets about them and then also framing them for like other bad things that they didn't even do. So really just torturing them, and these two have to band together to try and figure out what is going on. And as you can imagine, there is some racism rooted in that, as they are the only two black students at the school. So moving on, most likely to brighten your day, what is the happiest book that you read this year? For me, I instantly thought of Heartstopper by Alice Oseman, the graphic novel. I read the whole series, the 4 volumes. I read it online on Webtoon though, and this is just such a cute, feel-good graphic novel series. It is about these 2 boys, Nick and Charlie, about their romance and their relationship basically. They are 2 gay teen boys, and it is about them falling in love, dealing with their sexuality. One of them still needs to come out, so he's dealing with that. We also get to see their friends and family as well, and it's a very like cute, diverse, inclusive group of characters. This is also getting adapted soon, so I'm really excited, but this is definitely a graphic novel series that you can read if you are feeling down. It's pretty uplifting, although it does deal with some serious topics as well, like mental illness and eating disorders. So there is like some tough moments in there as well, but overall it's a pretty happy story. Next up is Best Entertainer. So obviously this is what is the most entertaining book you read this year. I read a lot of entertaining books this year. Thrillers and fantasy, I just find them so entertaining, and I read a bunch of those. But I think what I'm going to go with for this one is The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. I read this when I read TikTok books. This is a YA thriller, which is just the chef's kiss for me. Like, I love YA thrillers so much, but it's about this girl who's not very well off. She's kind of struggling financially and stuff, and then she gets left the inheritance from this billionaire that she has never met. His family is pissed and she has to go and like live in his mansion. It's kind of like a requirement for her to get his inheritance. So she's like around his family. A lot of them hate her, and she's trying to figure out like, why did he leave the inheritance to her? That is like the mystery of it. His grandchildren are also trying to figure out. He has 4 grandsons that are also trying to figure it out. So that's the mystery. Obviously people are kind of threatening her and stuff as well, which adds the thriller aspect. Obviously people are out to get her because she got all this money. It's also super entertaining because since it is YA, there is romance, and there's actually a love triangle between the girl and 2 of the grandsons. So I just feel like altogether this book was so entertaining in like every way you would possibly want, because you're just trying to like figure out the riddles and figure out why she got drawn, what is her name? Avery got drawn into this world. So very entertaining. Next up is Most Unique. What's the most unique book you read this year? I think I'm gonna go with Layla by Colleen Hoover. I don't know if it's the most unique, but I feel like it is for me, at least with what I've read. This is a paranormal romance about this guy and this girl, Layla. They fall in love, have like a typical romance together, and then something very traumatic happens to Layla in particular, kind of like physically and mentally. They decide to go back to where they first met at this like Airbnb to try to reconnect and heal and all that type of stuff. While they're there, some weird stuff starts going on, some creepy stuff. Whenever I talk about it, I don't like to say too much because I feel like I didn't know that much going in, and I was very shocked, very entertained. I feel like I have not read a book like this before. It gets weird. Like, people describe it as weird. It definitely is. It also has those typical Colleen Hoover plot twists that she includes in every book. I would say if you liked her book Verity, you would especially like this one because it has more of that creepiness than her typical romances, but there also is still romance in here. I just feel like it has everything that you want, and it was a pretty unique story, at least in my opinion. And I think this is also a pretty underhyped book by Colleen. Like, no one else talks about it, and I'm like, it's one of my favorites. Next up is Most Unforgettable. What's the most unforgettable book you've read this year? So I'm going with The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. This is a horror book that I read back in October. Definitely great for the Halloween vibes, very creepy. It is a very fun premise about this book club with these housewives from like the 80s and 90s. They have a book club specifically focused on reading like true crime, sort of like creepy stories. And our main character, Patricia, who we're seeing from, and this man moves into town. He seems like a typical normal man at first, and then some things happen and it seems like he might be a vampire. and Patricia is like the only one who knows. So it is about her trying to convince her friends in the book club, her family, that this man is a vampire terrorizing the town, and of course no one believes her. So it's very, very creepy and disturbing. There are a number of very disturbing scenes that I feel have stuck in my mind and have made this book unforgettable. It's super frustrating, but it's super good. Like, I could not stop reading. This one could also be one of the most unique ones I've read, but I think it fits more for the most unforgettable. I feel like this book is really gonna stick with me for a while. I highly recommend it if you think you can handle something like this. Just honestly, such a great book. There's a lot of social commentary in there as well as there are in most horror, and I think it was very enjoyable despite all of the upsetting things that happened in there. And finally, the most organized. What is the most well thought out book you've read this year? And I instantly thought of The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Turton. So this is a thriller novel I don't see talked about too much, so I'm gonna say it's a bit underrated, but it is, I think it's more of like a thriller sci-fi actually. There's some weird stuff going on in there, but it is about this man who keeps waking up, reliving the same day. So it has the Groundhog Day trope. Same day that this woman named Evelyn Hardcastle dies. Each day he wakes up in a different person's body and goes through the day living as that person. So he is finding out new clues in each day from each person's point of view, trying to piece together why or like who killed Evelyn Hardcastle and trying to stop it. So it's a little bit more complex than that. There's a lot going on, and I just remember reading it and feeling like the author must have had to plan this out super meticulously, because he has to remember what each character is doing at like each point of the day and everything that he is remembering, like our main character. It was so much, and I see why some people would be put off from the book, because it was a little bit much to even wrap your head around, especially in the beginning. I did struggle a little, but I definitely say push through it and that it is worth it to kind of see the payoff of the end and everything come together. So I definitely say props to Stuart Turton. He is the most organized this year, and definitely recommend that book, and recommend all of the books that I included in this video. It was definitely fun to like look back on the best of in the year. I am still gonna post like my favorite books of the year, but it definitely might feature some of these books on that list too. Thank you guys for watching. Let me know what your answer would be for one of these superlatives, and I look forward to seeing everyone's end of the year like summary videos. Thanks so much. See you next time. Bye.